Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This week, I'm excited to chat with actor Roger Dorman. You can see Roger right now starring as Officer Mike Wind in the satirical racial justice thriller Karen, alongside Taryn Manning, Jasmine Burke, and Gregory Allen Williams. The movie hit theaters and VOD September 3rd and will premiere on BET September 14th. Roger also can be seen in the upcoming Lifetime movie Cheer for Your Life and played Leland in the film Wander with Aaron Eckhart and Tommy Lee Jones. We discuss all of that, what he loves about acting, how he prepares for a role, and much more. It's a great interview, and I hope you enjoy. Hey, Roger, thanks so much for making time today. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you for having me on.
So, you've got a movie coming out this week on VOD theaters. It'll be on BET later this month. Karen, satirical horror with Taryn Manning in the lead role. The trailer looks wild. It looks like a lot of fun. Uh, can you talk a little bit about getting the role of Officer Mike Wind, and then y'all shot this in Georgia? Is that correct?
Yes, and out in Atlanta, yeah.
And just a little bit about audition, getting the role, and then what the film process was like actually making it.
Sure. Well, as far as getting the role, I read the role. We actors tend to really enjoy pushing ourselves and finding characters that were nothing alike, and that's what happened here. I felt it was a socially relevant narrative and story, and so I definitely wanted to be a part of it, and it was something that would really challenge me. So that's what drew me to the role. They just asked me to submit a audition tape on one of the bigger scenes in the movie, and I did so, and they loved it. So it was something that went fairly smoothly for me, and they thought I looked the part and so on. Funny story behind that is I was actually talked to or sent a message on my Instagram by some people that called me out saying that I look like the cops right before that happened. So it was quite interesting that I ended up getting a cop role doing exactly this because I looked the part, and in real life was told such. So it's kind of a funny story.
So you've also got Cheer for Your Life coming out on Lifetime, where you play Officer Hanson. Can you talk a little bit about prepping the role and making sure that you don't fall into, playing the same cop each time? When these are characters, these are people. Can you talk a little bit about the difference in prep there?
You bet. Well, Karen took about 3 to 4 months for me to prepare. I spent hundreds of hours on Skype with my acting coach, just coming out of COVID and so on. So there was a whole bunch of things that I was doing in preparation for the movie Karen, and it was a much larger role. The role of Officer Hanson in Cheer for Your Life, I'm an investigative cop, a small town cop, dealing with teenagers at a high school. And so there's a little bit more of a tenderness that happens there because you're dealing with kids, minors. And I'm just trying to get my hands around what's going on and trying to just see if there's something underhanded or wrong with the situation in Cheer for Your Life. Whereas with Karen, I'm actually the guy that is more or less scheming with my crazy sister and Karen, and am pushing an agenda that we have because of our racial inclinations. So it's two totally different roles, different arcs for sure. One was trying to figure something out. The other was racially biased.
When it comes to playing the villain in something, I've heard from actors before that it can be a fun experiment to get to explore that side of you, the person that is not like you. That it can, be fun to be the villain in the thing. Did you find between these roles, did you enjoy getting to play the scheming bad guy?
It's very liberating to be able to just let loose and be as mean and aggressive as you can be. With that said, I couldn't relate with this character. I mean, he's awful, and he's somebody that is very racist and has his reasons for it and so on. And the only way that I could prepare and get myself to that place was to take experiences in my own life, not with racism, but with other things that created emotions inside of me that would match on the outside as me being racist. And I would use those elements to bring me to that place, because I couldn't relate with racism. I was raised in small town America in a very Christian home, and I never saw any of that. I never experienced it. My hometown was 750 people. So I didn't experience that kind of a dynamic like maybe others who grow up in larger cities would. So I had to use what I had to use, which were other elements or other experiences in my life that created fear or hurt or made me feel threatened and so on. The same things that would create the emotional obligations to tie into those scenes and lines that I needed to use for the movie.
Yeah. And I would think that that's got to be a skill that you would work on in your craft, that you can't, become an alcoholic to do Leaving Las Vegas. Or at least you probably should not need to go that far into the role to play an alcoholic, or to do these things. And I hadn't ever quite thought of it that way, but that makes sense, to look for an emotion that matches it in volume or intensity, and sub it over to this other thing for this character. When it one of the movies that you have coming out that looks incredibly interesting to me is Wander, with Tommy Lee Jones and Aaron Eckhart, where you play Leland, but you also executive produce on the project. And I wanted to ask, what comes up, or how does it feel different for you to want to be involved in a project versus just be in front of the camera on it? Was it just an opportunity that came up, or are there certain stories that you look and go, oh, no, I'd like to be more involved here?
Well, yeah, it all depends upon the opportunity, really, and the timing of it, depending upon what's needed, money-wise and so on. I had an opportunity to invest in the movie Wander as an executive producer, so I seized that, and I'm glad I did. It didn't take away from the acting portion, because I don't know if people know this, but executive producers, they're not really involved in the production. They are literally just funders of movies, whereas the producers themselves are the ones that actually run the set and handle the finances and do all the casting and everything else. But the executive producers, that just means we play a passive role in funding the movie to get it off the ground.
Was there something about the project when it got in front of you where you went, yeah, I'll put my own skin in that game?
Well, the fact that there was Tommy Lee Jones, Aaron Eckhart, Catherine Winnick, Heather Graham, Raymond Cruz, Brendan Fair, and these are all established actors.
Yeah,
in the case
amazing.
of Tommy Lee, yeah. So who wouldn't want to invest in a opportunity like that?
Agreed. I wasn't sure if you'd come aboard with those secured, or if you had just gotten this really fun, unreliable narrator crime script, which I'm a sucker for that story setup, when you can't quite trust the person leading you through the story. When it came to getting into the acting game, do you remember the first time that you kind of got bit by the bug and thought, oh, this is more than fun. This is something I've got to do professionally?
It came with a combination of working with my acting coach and the hours I spent with her, and found that it was very cathartic, that I call it acting therapy, because we are pulling real experiences from my life, depending upon the emotional obligation needed or the multiplicity of those obligations. I mean, most people, when they feel something, they feel 2 or 3 feelings at once that compiled create who they are in the moment, that cause them to act irrationally or act compassionately or whatever it is, tied with their own experience in life and set of values. So going through that, when you're mapping out a script with the help of those that are very experienced, you have to revisit your life, the good, the bad, the ugly. And having those moments to be able to go through it can be incredibly rewarding in and of itself. And then the payoff, of course, is coming on set and pulling it off. It's horrifying. Everybody gets nervous on set. I would be surprised if even the A-listers that we know about and love don't get quite nervous before their roles, depending upon the role and what's required of them. And that was the case for me. I went in extremely nervous, but in the first scene that I did, it happened to be that my nerves are what were needed as part of the overall storytelling in that scene. So I just used it and was able to pull it off pretty well. So the great thing is no matter what you're feeling, you can pull that forward. And then it's like anything, when you've done a good job and you came prepared and you were dependable on set and you did something well, and the director gives you the thumbs up or is happy with what they saw and took, and you walk off, it's a liberating feeling. And that's something you just can't describe. That's why actors do what they do. Maybe the big boys get to a place to where they make a lot of money, but I assure you where they fell in love with acting was in the actual payoff of the job well done, not in the money. And that's what it did for me. When that first scene was over on my first movie, it was liberating and so exciting to say, yes, it's behind me. I never have to think about this scene again. I spent 50 hours on it in excruciating emotional drama of my life, preparing for it, and then I nailed the scene. I didn't screw up, or if I did, no big deal. Took several takes, got different angles and whatever else, and then it was over with. And it's a mixture of emptiness, but also a liberating, exhilarating feeling as well, knowing that you did a good job.
Yeah, I would think at some point you can't count on the paycheck of Major League Baseball. You just have to love the feeling of the bat connecting with the ball. You just gotta like that feeling. And you can't be the actor that can only call up fun feelings because you don't want to go to these places in yourself. You'd have to mind it all. Do you ever find it difficult to kind of put the tools down at the end of the day? Do you ever come out of a scene and go, oh gosh, that was 50 hours of getting into a really bad headspace. Now I gotta dust it off and walk away.
Well, we saw that with Heath Ledger, right? In a horrible scenario. Well, I experienced that to some degree after this last role in Karen. I went to very dark places and had to stay there on set for 16 days nonstop. If I wasn't on set, I was in my hotel room on the phone with my acting coach going over this stuff and diving back into the yuckiness of my life to be able to, of things that I would create in my life or that I remembered from various experiences. And I'd have to live there and stew in it every day during COVID, not leaving my hotel room. So I continued to go down this dark place. So it took me easily a good couple months after filming had stopped for me to kind of pull out of this almost depressive state. Definitely a dark cloud was hanging over me for a while. So I'm sure that's the same case with many actors that put everything they have into it. It takes a while to come back out.
Was there anything in particular that you felt like helped you? I know we've all looked for ways to come out of different funks this past year in our own ways, routine or exercise, or is there anything that helped kind of make a bright spot?
Two things. One was being active and getting out there and starting to exercise and so on, or just get out in nature and go hiking. And the other thing were my kids, being able to reconnect with them. I've got a couple of adult children, but then I also have this little 9-year-old boy that I'm very close to, and just spending time with him and looking at things from a childlike perspective was all I needed to be able to snap out of it. And then I coached his Little League Baseball team shortly thereafter, and that seemed to do the job to where I could just be around life again and innocence and happiness again.
Yeah, really no space for an officer Mike Wind there.
Exactly.
And I
Glad
can't
he's
wait.
behind me.
I can't wait to see it. I think it's going to be a blast of a movie. We're talking right now, a day before I believe it releases, and then of course it'll be on BET later this month. Thank you so much for talking to me about it all today. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you for your time.
The TV Dudes is an independently run podcast out of Austin, Texas. We are exclusively listener supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/TVDudes.
You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TV Dudes. All the music for our show is done by our friend and original TV Dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith.
To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com. I'm Randy Lander.
I'm Les Weiler.
And I'm Kyle Scott.
Thanks for listening.